This past week, you saw a lot of headlines regarding the nation's Federal Reserve. A federal judge blocked the White House's attempt to remove Fed Governor Lisa Cook, who's from Georgia, keeping her in place for now. It spotlighted questions about the bank's independence. And at the same time, new data shows inflation is creeping up to 2.9% in August, while job growth stalls and jobless claims surge. Those are signs the economy is cooling more than expected. And investors are already reacting. Mortgage rates saw their biggest drop in a year. Global markets are rallying ahead of the Fed's next meeting later this week. So a lot to talk about, a lot of noise swirling around the Fed. How much does that influence the decisions you make with your own budget? Here to help us make sense of it, as he does every Monday, financial expert Andrew Poulos. Always good to see you, Andrew.
Good to see you, Cheryl.
All right, let's start with that meeting. Is the Fed still able to focus on the economic numbers, or does all the political swirling around us risk distracting from that main mission?
Yeah, well, one would hope that the Fed will focus on the numbers and leave the politics out of it. Obviously, that's becoming more and more difficult for the Fed to do, whether we really want to accept that or not. It's becoming just a challenge with all the political drama and the theatrics going on. But really, the Fed's job is to be independent and make decisions based on numbers and based on the economics that they're seeing.
This is the question every time around. Is a rate cut coming? Do we expect a rate cut coming out of this meeting? If so, how much might that be?
Yeah, listen, this week, the Fed's meeting, I think the markets are expecting a rate cut. I'm expecting probably a quarter. I would be very surprised if we see a half-point rate cut. That would be an enormous step by the Fed. Also, I think that might spook the markets in a sense that they might feel things economically are worse than the Fed is letting on. So overall, a quarter-point cut. The more important thing is going to be to see what kind of future outlook Fed Chairman Powell gives us, meaning does he tell us we're going to have one rate cut or we're going to have 3 or 4 between now and the end of the year. That's what I'm looking for, is to see how many more rate cuts are we expecting between now and December.
All right, could it be the first of a couple more to come? What will that signal to the average person and to the families here in Metro Atlanta? How will they have to adjust finances based on the trends we're seeing and the decisions you think may come down the line?
Yeah, I mean, Cheryl, look, at the end of the day, if we start having rate cuts, that obviously is telling us that the Fed tightened for quite some time. Things are getting tougher economically. We can already see that with the jobs reports week after week and each month, revisions. So I think the average consumer here in our state needs to be aware that the market is slowing down. Jobs are harder to come by. You need to prepare your finances accordingly, and don't let the quarter point or multiple quarter point rate cuts excite you. That just means that we're probably looking at some difficult times ahead of us. How much, we don't know, but I'd prepare your budgets accordingly and not overspend.
All right, hold on for the long haul. Let's talk a little bit more about Lisa Cook. I mentioned she's from Georgia. That fight over her position is getting a lot of attention. Have we ever seen a president fight as hard like this over a governor? Who do you think could win this in the end?
Yeah, listen, this is unprecedented to have a president fighting to oust a Fed governor. We have not seen this. I think ultimately, Cheryl, this is going to end up in the Supreme Court. And if you and I were headed to Vegas, I'd let you bet on it. I'd sit on the sideline and watch the drama come out of this. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes out, but it's also just concerning, because if we get to the point where a president can remove a Fed governor for what they deem unfit at any time, that takes away the independence that the Fed really is expected to have. Fed governors are appointed and they're there for 14 years. Unless they do something while they are Fed governor, it's very difficult to remove them from their position. So I just foresee this is going to end up at the Supreme Court. It's going to be very interesting to see what a conservative court's going to rule on this one.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. It's not just about this case, but the precedent and the independence of the Fed and why that's so important to the U.S. economy. At the end of the day, what's the single biggest way this Fed decision will hit families' wallets here in Georgia, as we circle back to kind of that bigger view over mortgages, credit cards, or jobs, as you mentioned, at a time people are feeling it already and may need to tighten up more?
Yeah, I think, look, we're going to start. I'm almost certain, not positive, but then I could be wrong, but I think we're going to get a quarter-point cut this week. Again, we'll see how many rate cuts the Fed's going to give us between now and the end of the year. We have to prepare just for some difficult times, right? We see a mild recession. I think we're probably going to see some sort of recession at some point based on just all the jobs and everything we've seen. We need to prepare, be a little more maybe conservative with your spending, cut back. Just because we get rate cuts doesn't necessarily mean it's going to impact us directly in our wallet with much lower interest rates on credit cards. Mortgage rates are affected indirectly, not directly with rate cuts. So once again, if we get a quarter point, even if we get 3/4 point cuts between now and December, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see mortgage rates drop 3/4 points or a point, right, directly. So while all of it has an impact on our finances as consumers, what the Fed does or doesn't do, ultimately it's up to us to start budgeting and managing our finances and just expect some difficult times, probably the next 6 to 9 months out there.
Andrew, when you say mild recession or recession potentially on the horizon, I know that gets a lot of people paying attention, so we really appreciate the information as people navigate some tough times out there. We appreciate the time every Monday.
Absolutely.